Good morning, everybody. This is John Spiokla from GAI Insights, bringing you the Gen AI news briefing, rating the top news, essential, important, or optional. We have a full house of analysts today because today is, believe it or not, our 100th episode of rating the news. We knew we were crazy. We didn't know they were that crazy. So here we are for the 100th episode, and the ever effervescent David DeLallo is going to take us through it. David.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I can't believe it's been 100. So I've now waken at 6:30 in the morning 100 times, which my mother would be very proud of me for and completely shocked. And I have enjoyed every minute of it with you guys. It's been totally worth it.
David, I think that's the bigger accomplishment. You getting up early 100 times.
I'm almost used to it. Almost. All right. So definitely love that we're on our 100th show. Let's see how we're going to celebrate it today. We're going to talk about some significant funding that Elon Musk has raised to get further into the mix with all of the state-of-the-art models with his own model. We will look at a way a bank in Australia is using generative AI. We will look at how generative AI is performing in financial statement analysis, which I found it's really interesting, plus much more. So without further ado, let's talk about this Ankaj. And Ankaj is, as everybody knows, who puts all of these articles together for us every morning or every evening in his time zone. So thank you, Ankaj, for all you've been doing. You do a great job.
No worries. Thanks, David. So congratulations to everyone on the 100th episode. So the first one that we have for today is a big one from XAI. So XAI has raised a Series B funding round of $6 billion. So it's not XAI's valuation, but they have raised $6 billion at the valuation of $24 billion.
Unbelievable. Luda, what did you think about this?
It seems like $1 billion is becoming a new million. We've been, in investing, we used millions, and when it was 7 million, it was a reasonable Series B. Now 6 billion is a reasonable Series B. It sounds like. It's amazing. It's astounding that you can raise 6 billion in Series B. But what I rate it as optional, though, for our executives. It seems like, it was in the news for a while that he's doing that. It's amazing that he closed it. But the attraction of the investors was the fact that he does sit on a lot of data from Tesla and the like, and that will be very helpful in training new advanced models. So it is notable, but I think optional for our audience.
Okay, any other votes for important?
No, I agree. Billion here, a billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money, right?
I wonder though if it's still not nearly enough. I mean, we've seen Meta talk about investing 10 billion, and it seems like if you want to play the foundation model game, you've got to get 10 to 30 billion investment over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's separating the men from the boys. I think it's even more interesting of looking what's really going on with his empire. I mean, I think it feels like he's almost given up on being able to beat the Chinese companies and EVs. So Tesla is not an EV company anymore. It's a robot company. It just happens to have a physical device there. And
I'm interested to see what happens. I mean, we're seeing, Reddit data, which is definitely riddled with a lot of crap, starting to, kick Google in the pants with their search results. Now we're going to have something based on Twitter data, which I was in a debate with a friend, Chris McKay, who I know will be speaking at our conference, and he'll also be making a guest analyst appearance in the next couple of weeks about this. But, I don't think that Twitter data, I'd give it, a step or two above. As he pointed out, it does have a lot of, news outlets in there, but I mean, there's a lot of crap in that data, and we've been seeing that it's not possible to really get it all out. So I don't know. Investors, I mean, they're also, of course, banking on the name Elon Musk because he's done a lot of things. Although I would note he hasn't achieved a lot of his stretch goals that he keeps saying that are going to happen, like self-driving cars, etc. But I guess it's a decent bet. If I had the money, I'd probably throw him a little bit too.
But look at the just wrapping up, and look at the companies at depths for sale. They were aspiring, and they raised, I think, 400 or 500 million. John and I know another Valley company that's raised over $1 billion that's given up investing in foundation models. So it's the men have already separated themselves, or the leaders, or the princes and kings have already separated themselves from the rest of the world. It's not clear that to me that it's a venture backable model anymore.
Yeah, I don't. It's interesting. I mean, Mauricio notes, how much better info will be in the data that he has, and I think there could be a lot there. Another interesting question from a corporate governance standpoint is, have the Tesla shareholders and the ex shareholders, agreed with he's selling off, implying that he's going to, coordinate corporate assets that aren't his fully. I mean, he's just running roughshod over corporate governance big time.
The governance of all three of these guys is a debacle. OpenAI, Anthropic, and Tesla. It's breathtaking amount of money and poor governance.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's made a lot of people very, 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 very rich. I mean, and he's only blown a couple biggies like X. And,
tunnels.
I should do so well as Elon Musk. My God.
Yeah.
All right.
It's also that it will take some time for him to build the right team together to get really going on this mission. So
I think that's the biggest question, actually, is can he, with any amount of money, attract the right team?
Yeah.
The normal answer to that is yes. You have that much money, you can attract a team, and I think he will attract the team. But there's so much demand, and he doesn't have a great reputation as a place, for creating good places to work.
And Tim, I think he had just 3 of his senior execs leave in the last 2 weeks on the Tesla side.
Yeah, we'll see. It's a lot of money, and he can raise a lot of money. Remember, this is only Series B, so maybe he needs more, but he can probably raise it. He can write the check if he needs to.
All right, we will go optional for this one and move on to the next.
Yep. So the next one comes from National Australia Bank, and they have identified around 20 use cases for GenAI implementation. They are in pilot stages of many of them, and they highlight some very interesting use cases, which we haven't seen before with other banks.
Yes, Adam, of course, I had to give this to you, given you are based in Australia.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. I consider this important news. I'd even go as far to say upper back pocket, Tim. It's a fairly detailed article. It does mention 20 use cases. There's more than a half dozen that it actually describes in the article. Specifically, the 3 in the headline have to do with identifying how serious customer complaints are, assessing trust deeds and helping to expedite lending decisions, and tailoring messages that are sent to customers based on personality types. It also goes into some of the detail about the regulatory side of it and the expectations, at least in Australia, with regards to the importance of keeping the human in the loop. So it's a fairly comprehensive article, and I would definitely consider it something to make the time to read when you have the time. So it's important.
All right, we've got a big E. Does anyone disagree?
Important.
Oh, important. Okay.
Yeah, I would say important. Again, there's not a lot of detail here, but thank you for the pocket reference again. I should trademark that. The other thing I've been saying from the beginning of the year is 2024 is going to be the year of production. So this was a nice article to wrap that up and say, wow, we're getting to halfway through the year, and here are not 1 but 2 banks, pretty big banks, and just a wide variety of production implementations going into play in a highly regulated market. So pretty interesting. Not a lot of detail on the apps, descriptions of the apps, but not a lot of detail. But interesting how much and how broad, how many applications and how broad the applications were.
All right, we've got important and an agreement on important. Any other thoughts before we move on? All right, move on. Important it is. Let's see what we have next. Akash, where have you gone?
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry about that. Yeah. So the next one is financial statement analysis with large language models. And this research talks about how in some of the use cases, LLMs are performing better than human analysts.
Wow, I found this impressive and fascinating. John, what did you think?
Yeah, I really this is important. Essential for anybody in the financial services business. Dealing with stocks, buy or sell side. Really interesting. First of all, very very nicely done study. Just what you'd expect. From the guys and gals at the University of Chicago, and the model basically they feed this thing standardized P&Ls, and they take out references to companies and also the management discussion and analysis. And it does a better job of predicting the direction of earnings than analysts or other machine learning models, which is pretty impressive. And they also put together a synthetic portfolio, which has better statistics, a higher Sharpe ratio, which is, better return for less risk. So I thought it was really interesting. The other thing that was fascinating is they looked for what's the cause of the understanding, and they actually did an analysis where they got it down to two factors, and the factor they believe is the cause of the improvement is actually the generated prose by the model about the company is where the variance fits. So feeding it standard data, then generating out new prose is where the information is that then allows it, because they did a regression analysis on that, allows it to then be superior than other methods, which I thought was fascinating, just in terms of where the insight comes from. Anyway, very thoughtful paper. I rate it as important, essential for people in financial services.
Okay, I'm going to make an argument for essential. Definitely essential, as you said, for anybody in financial services, but I would argue essential for anybody because besides the fact that I just think this is a really impressive feat that it's outperforming financial analysts, and noting only with when you give it chain of thought prompts out of the box doesn't do it on its own. It's actually, though, close to the performance out of the box, but exceeds it once you put chain of thought into the mix. I think that this breaks some of the, discourse on the misperformance of models when it comes to like numerical calculations and reasoning, right? I mean, this is a pretty impressive feat that it's looking at financial statements only and surpassing humans in how it predicts financial performance. I just think that this is it's a good read. I feel like it's a well-written paper. Yes. I feel like it's one that the AI leaders should read because I think it dispels some myths and shows that there could be some applications that under the covers that we haven't uncovered yet that it's good for, that people may ignore because of the general hit that everyone gives on models for how they do with numerical kind of reasoning and calculation.
Yeah, and you wonder how well it would do if they put in the management discussion and analysis, which they
right.
pull out, right? Yeah.
It's a pretty long thing, right? Quite long.
John, give it to her.
So, but I would agree that it is an essential read. So because of several, like David, you said, several myths. See, they focused on just numbers, and yet they saw that specialized models trained on the numbers underperformed versus the general models that it sounds like we're able to add certain general knowledge and general reasoning. So there's several myths that discussed here, and with quite good clarity. So I agree that this is a good one to read.
It's really long, but so maybe a weekend essential read. I don't think most executives are going to have time to read this during the week, despite John's exhortations. The most interesting thing here to me is that a general purpose model did very well. And there's a lot of, and I've said this too. There's a lot of, well, we're going to have specialized models that are really focused. But there's an argument that when you're talking about interpretation and reasoning in general, broader skills are better. If you're playing tennis or basketball, narrow skills are hugely important. You can just totally focus on a very, very narrow set of skills. If you're working and writing and thinking, it's pretty hard. There's a whole book on this called Range by David Epstein. It's pretty interesting. And this is another time where a general purpose model has done better than a narrow model. So I think that argument is not settled yet. I think there will be narrow models that do well in certain very specific tasks, but not clear they'll be superior overall.
Yeah, but just a note, I totally with you, but just a note, they gave the model, the general model, a very clear how the analysts, examples of how the analysts would do the analysis.
Right. Like we do with humans.
This is very good prompting in the fine tuning, if you will. So this is pretty good. This combination worked, right? So we know.
Yeah, it's been shown to work. Few shot examples plus chain of thought, which is very much a very oversimplified apprenticeship model.
Yeah.
The only thing I wanted to just point out really quickly is I didn't notice anywhere where it was predicting on anything that would decrease. So I only saw regarding increases. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well, that I'm not sure if it's a complete picture. Unless I missed something, please let me know. But I just wanted to point that out as well.
Yeah.
As it was a one-way sort of.
Most financial analysts do that to, err on the side of being overly positive versus overly negative. So maybe it's picking up on that behavior.
No, the measure actually, Amanda, was direction, not just increase. So did it predict up or down better than the analyst? And just one pointer to people who haven't read academic papers before. You can decide if you want to go into the detail of something like how they prepare the data, which is fairly substantial, or what model they chose and why. So I think this is eminently readable by the thoughtful executive who knows how to read these things, and they should know how to read these things, especially now.
Quick note that when I first started reading this, I used Adobe Acrobat's summarize tool. It was quite good. I was actually pleasantly surprised. Breaks it down into every section, gives the section a heading, gives a really nice summary. It actually provides the information. Sometimes if you ask ChatGPT to summarize, it says what it talks about rather than actually gives the information. So clearly they fine-tuned it. So just a plug for good job on Adobe. Okay, We're going with essential, and we're going to go on to the next article, and I will bring you back up here, Ankash.
Okay, so the next one comes from Meta and XAI. So they have been fighting to partner with character.ai. So character.ai uses large language models to generate conversation style of various figures and personas, and it has been very popular with a variety of folks.
Yes, this is the second most used app outside of ChatGPT. Paul, what did you think about this?
It's bringing a nothing burger out there. What a surprise, John, that the big Silicon Valley companies are fighting. I think it shows how the corner lots are up, and I think corner lots are around AI talent and key partnerships like this. And I agree, David, it is a really important AI property, particularly since they're having the digital characters talk. And if we move into motion and move to a world where we really have interacting with characters we like that match our personality, this is remains an important company. But this article is optional, in my view.
Any thoughts outside of optional?
No, I think it is, to Paul's point that he's been making from the beginning, this is the big dogs surrounding properties. The only interesting thing is the article implies they're hesitant to take them over. Unclear how much real inside information they have because of worries about antitrust. It's probably there in some sense, but it also may just be they've got plenty of money and plenty of time. So they're just trying to invest right now and give themselves an option maybe to acquire later. Unclear.
I think antitrust is a concern, though. I mean, Meta is doing something similar with its own property, right? It's standing up, and they have some famous ones, right? Like Snoop Dogg and other characters. So it's really in line with one of the major projects Meta has underway for their LLMs. So I do think it's a real concern.
But I'd be shocked if Perplexity and Character AI are independent companies 12 months from now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll take that bet. Want to bet $100?
Sold.
$100.
I might split it. I think Perplexity will be, but Character AI will not be.
I was going to go the other way.
Oh, look at this. We should.
All right, now just clear on the bet. They both have to be acquired, or I win. Right?
Okay. It's always in the footnotes.
I'm not taking that bet. Then I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, that's what Paul uttered. You stand behind it, or was the bet
I stand behind it, John.
Okay, $100.
Right. But we're tracking this. Okay, let's move on to the next one on Kaj. We're going optional there.
Yeah. So the next one comes from WPP. So while this article heading is about adding Anthropic platform, it talks quite a bit in detail about what WPP is doing with GenAI.
Yes, and WPP is, of course, the owner of Ogilvy and other properties of that nature. And it's always interesting to me that they started off as Wire and Plastics, which is what that name stands for. So we have, who did we have on this one? Amanda, what did you think about this?
No, it's Wireframe Production. That's what it stands for.
No, it's Wire and Plastics.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Yeah.
I looked it up, John.
Yeah,
Amanda.
so I think for me, this was optional because I felt like as I was digging through it, really it was talking about integration of Claude into their WPPP Open, so their AI-powered platform, basically. It talked about Claude a little bit, different versions of Claude 3, and it talked about some of their AI strategy, which included like ideation, automation, optimization. I mean, these are the words we hear from every single company out there who's implementing this stuff. So who really isn't doing that? The only thing for me personally that stood out is I'm working with AI companies now that we're focused on explainability and transparency. And so I know their CTO, Stefan, mentioned that in there. So for me, that's kind of what stood out is people are still really concerned with any sort of explainability and transparency of these models, which a lot of them just aren't. So other than that, for me, this was totally optional.
Okay, we have an optional. Do we have any other thoughts to add or a different?
Yeah, I would argue. Oh, go ahead. Somebody was.
Sorry, Tim. I was going to say I agree it's optional, but the other things that stood out was the comment that they are building this on Amazon's Bedrock, and the fact that they're multi-model, right? They're also using OpenAI, Google, and Stability already. So those are noteworthy, but not enough. I agree with Amanda to make this important news.
Yeah, we can go with optional. I was leaning towards important. Again, it's kind of a back pocket article. I think if you're in the digital marketing space, this is definitely at least important. And the surprising thing is, this is WPP. You don't think of them as right there with OpenAI and Google, and yet they're building a multi-model open platform that they're using aggressively. It's pretty sophisticated stuff. It reminds me, honestly, of Amazon when they first developed AWS, which is now, a pretty big business. So surprising things happen like this. And, we know from John and Paul's early article, these guys are in the crucible. I mean, digital advertising is entirely about symbol manipulation. So they're pretty aggressive, and it's a pretty interesting platform. So certainly if you're in digital marketing, I think you need to pay attention to this. And I'm sort of leaning towards important, but we can keep it optional because there's nothing in it beyond that.
I remember an article that we talked about. It was at least a couple of months ago, and it was Publicis Group, and I think one of their companies specifically that actually has gone a step further, and they're building models for their clients or fine-tuning them at least.
Right.
It's interesting. So it seems like WPP maybe has not gone that far yet, but will be interesting to see if they get into that. Okay, so we have importance. We have one optional. Any other thoughts? before
Two
I
options.
come down with the
Two
gavel?
optionals. Two optionals.
Yeah, no, two options.
Optional. I was optional. The
Yeah, I was also optional, but very, very fascinating how broad and deep they're going.
Okay, I'm coming down on optional on this one. I thought it was clearly a press release that was jointly created by Anthropic and WPP, and it was somewhat insightful, but I didn't think it was really hitting the mark completely.
all right,
We're going optional, and we are going to move on.
right. And we're going to
Yep.
in honor of our 100th event. We're going to go to the robot on this one.
That's right. Let's have Ankaj introduce, and then we'll let our robot friend weigh in.
Echo.
Sure. So this one talks about understanding the cost of GenAI models in production. So while we have been focused on looking at the cost of these foundational models, there are other elements in play as well, which contribute a lot to the production cost of LLMs.
Okay, so we have built Echo to echo our sentiments generally. Adam, you want to tell us a little bit how you developed?
I rated this news as important. It provides a comprehensive analysis of the total cost of ownership for generative AI models, highlighting both generic and Gen AI specific cost factors. It offers valuable insights for decision makers by detailing the hidden costs and strategic choices between managed and self-built solutions, making it particularly relevant for those planning AI deployments. Understanding these nuanced financial aspects can lead to more informed, strategic decisions and significant cost savings. Read this important news when you have time to understand the deeper financial implications of deploying advanced AI solutions.
Okay, before we go on to hear everybody else's rating, Adam, you want to tell us a little bit about how you created her? I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, sure. So I have a custom GPT that is her Eminence Echo, and she is actually leading a team of analysts. There's I think there's Ollie optional, Indira important, and Eric essential. And so she starts by hearing Ollie's opinion, and then Indira makes a rebuttal, and she decides whether or not it's important or optional news. At which point, if it's important, then she hears from Eric about why it might be essential. And then she comes in as the ruling party to come up with a final justification and analysis. I then took that output, put it into Runway ML's lip sync tool, along with the image of Echo, and then put that into Clipchamp along with the screenshot of the article to pull the whole thing together.
Really cool. Really cool. So we have one rating from Echo. What does everyone else think?
You know, I think I was leaning towards important because it gives people attention to the issue. I don't think the analysis is particularly good, but I do think there is a need to pay attention to more than compute cost. Absolutely. And total cost, we've talked a little bit in the past about total cost of ownership. I would not recommend this model proposed by this article. I don't think it's particularly good.
I totally go with optional on this one, because my argument is that even if you go outsource, you need an engineer.
Right.
And what happened, if you look at the final line on the total cost, the model that the outsource model was not loaded with the labor costs. And the other one was, obviously, because you had to develop that. So it is unfair justification, but it does go through the various factors that need to be taken into account. So I think this particular article is not good. I would not rate it well.
Yeah, I was confused actually because I couldn't tell if they already baked in one engineer and then you saying you needed an additional one because the description implied that. No. Okay.
They're just pointing out that labor costs are real, which is true, but labor costs are also fixed. And if you need the people anyway, you already have the cost. The real issue to me in total cost of ownership for most software these days is almost all the cost is after release. And that's what people don't take into account. Like 90+% of the cost is maintenance, training, culture, modification, the bazillion things that have to happen over 10 or 15 years for software to be successful.
Okay, I'm going to come down on optional then, because we don't want to provide an analysis.
I was going to say the irony is I don't agree with Echo. I thought it was optional news. The vast majority of the considerations, that are listed in that article are things you'd have to consider about operationalizing any new technology. It wasn't actually that insightful an article. It is absolutely important to think about the operational and runtime ongoing costs of large language models and these new Gen AI technologies, but that article itself, I don't think was the way to go about it.
Okay, so we're going optional. And we have come to the end of our 100th show. Do our fearless leaders have anything that we want to say before we...
We want to acknowledge a legendary person died this week. Tim, you want to highlight that?
Yeah, so Gordon Bell passed away on the 17th of May. He'd been sick for a while. He was 89, I think, so he lived a long and good life. But more importantly, he was a fantastic human being and an incredible leader in overall technology, supercomputing. If you like the internet, thank Gordon Bell, because Gordon actually gave up his professional career and went to the NSF and ran the internet during the critical period where it went from a academic toy to the point where it got released in the early 90s and became a real thing. And Gordon was all about that, and just a tremendous human being, in my opinion, and very successful. He was the original architect of the VAX computer and Digital Equipment Corporation, among many, many other things that he did. And to anybody who's interested in computer science and calls himself a computer scientist, if you don't know who Gordon Bell is, if you don't know who Alan Kay is, if you don't know these people, Claude Shannon, you're really not a computer scientist. It'd be like being a physicist and not knowing who Maxwell and Newton are. And unfortunately, it's largely true of our profession. So a big exhortation to type Gordon Bell into Wikipedia or Google at least.
Yeah, Gordon was amazing. He the other thing that so many things to say about Gordon, the one thing that I just would add is that, people talk about, individuals who keep their childlike sense of wonder. Gordon was that dude. Like, I was in a lot of settings with him. One time I went to the Intel Moat lab with him, and when he came in, they do very, very small, autonomous computers. I went in with him, and it was like imagine what it would be like going to a local parish with the Pope. I mean, the engineers just were like unbelievable. They just couldn't believe that Gordon Bell was there. I mean, and he was so gracious and always willing to help and make a bet. Lost a couple bets, well, one bet to him in particular, but he was a man of action and a man of imagination and an open soul.
All right, thank you guys for that. Anything else that you'd like to close with before we start our march towards 200?
I would just like to thank everybody, on this panel. You guys come with such spirit, and David, getting up early, Adam staying up late, and it's just, it's just a real pleasure to wake up every day and have a chance to work with you guys on this thing. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you for getting us together.
David, on the news front, we had a fantastic discussion last night in a learning lab. It'll be posted later today or tomorrow on talking about how can companies that rely on SEO, how can they, or is there a way for them to influence the results that come out of large language models next year, as Gartner and others believe that 25% of the searches, particularly for products, are going to now start generating in large language model based things rather than the 30-year monopoly that Google has.
Huge topic for any company. So definitely
terrific discussion.
Really good. Everybody should watch that one. Okay, we will close out number 100 here. Everybody have an amazing day, and we will, of course, see you at the same time tomorrow.
Everyone can stay on for